Mate, let's cut the crap. Aussies are getting absolutely stitched up right now, and nobody in Canberra wants to admit it. Albanese promised cheaper power bills, safer jobs, and a fair go for families. What'd we actually get? Sky-high electricity prices, groceries that cost more than a weekend bender in Sydney, and a government more obsessed with shiny net zero slogans than keeping a roof over people's heads. And here's the kicker, Albo doesn't even cop to it. He stands there in Parliament acting like everything's rosy while real Aussies are lining up at bloody food banks. Tell me how that's leadership. Tell me how that's progress. It's a joke, and everyone knows it. Before we dive headfirst into how Albanese sold Aussies out with sky-high bills, fake promises, and net zero madness, slap that like button like you're smashing Albo's $275 power bill fantasy. Subscribe if you're done watching Canberra elites wreck the country while you can't even afford a steak. And don't forget the "Can I vote for a kangaroo" shirt, links in the description. And don't think I'm pulling this out of thin air. Even John Howard, the bloke who's been around long enough to smell political nonsense a mile away, says the obsession with net zero is madness. He reckons the world won't collapse if Australia doesn't hit some arbitrary carbon number by 2050. And you know what? He's right. China, India, the US, they're burning fossil fuels like there's no tomorrow. And yet we're supposed to bankrupt ourselves to make 1% of global emissions vanish? Give me a break. Meanwhile, Albanese is strutting around like a climate messiah, when in reality he's just smashing middle-class Aussies with power bills they can't pay. And where the bloody hell is Susan Ley in all this? The first woman to lead the Liberal Party, and instead of tearing Albo to shreds every single day, she's tiptoeing around like she's scared of offending Greta Thunberg. This was her shot to show backbone, to prove she's got the grit to take the fight to Labour. But what do we get? Silence, platitudes, and the same boring lines about responsible opposition. No, mate, that's not what Aussies want. They want someone who'll call Albanese out for the fraud he is, someone who'll stand up and say, "This government is wrecking the joint." But Lay's too busy playing it safe, and in politics, playing it safe is the fastest way to lose. Meanwhile, Trump, Donald bloody Trump, he's back in the White House, and love him or hate him, at least the bloke doesn't mince words. He's making deals, protecting American jobs, putting tariffs on countries that take the piss. Compare that to Albo, who bends over backwards for global elites while Aussies can't even afford steak for dinner. The contrast couldn't be clearer. Trump backs his own people. Albanese sells us out. And it's high time we start asking, whose side is this government actually on? Because it sure as hell isn't the side of working Aussies. Look, Matt Canavan said it plain, lives are much worse under Albanese. That's not political spin, that's the lived reality. People can't pay bills. Farmers are getting smashed with red tape. Young Aussies can't even dream of buying a house unless they sell a kidney. And what's the government's answer? More slogans, more empty promises, more bloody photo ops at solar farms that will never employ half the workers who lost coal jobs. It's betrayal, pure and simple. And you better believe Aussies are waking up to it. Now let me tell you why this isn't just bad policy, it's dangerous. When you rob people of hope, when you keep piling on costs while ignoring their struggles, you create a breeding ground for anger, resentment, and division. And mate, you only need to look overseas to see how that plays out. Europe's burning with protests. Farmers in France, truckies in the Netherlands, they've had enough. Don't think for a second that Aussies won't hit the streets when they realize the truth. Albanese is sitting on a powder keg, and one wrong move could blow the whole thing sky high. And the kicker? He knows it. That's why you're seeing more restrictions on protests, more talk about approved zones. They want to silence people before the anger boils over. But here's the problem, Aussies don't stay quiet forever. You tell a bloke he can't speak his mind, he'll shout louder. You tell him he can't march in Sydney, he'll block a highway. And when that happens, it won't just be Albanese in trouble. It'll be the entire political class, because Aussies are sick to death of being treated like mugs. Right, so let's not dance around it. This government is panicking. They've overpromised, underdelivered, and now they're scrambling to stop the whole facade from collapsing. You can feel it, can't you? Every press conference, every staged smile from Albanese, it reeks of desperation. They thought Aussies would just cop higher bills in the name of saving the planet. They thought people wouldn't notice when the so-called hydrogen hubs turned out to be more fantasy than fact. But here's the truth, people are noticing, and they're bloody furious. You talk to mums at the school gate, tradies on Smoko, retirees in the servo queue, they all say the same thing. Life is harder, and it's because of this mob in Canberra. And what's their answer? More spin. Albanese's crew are masters of distraction. When the cost of living crisis bites, what do? They bang on about climate targets. When housing becomes a nightmare, they ramble about international cooperation. When young Aussies are drowning in debt, they pose for photos at global summits. It's all theatre, mate. They're actors reading lines while the country burns. And let's be honest, Albo doesn't look like a leader. He looks like a bloke who's wandered into the wrong pub and is too polite to leave. He talks big overseas, but back home he's got nothing. No plan, no guts, no clue. Now, compare that with Trump again. Say what you will about the bloke. Loud, brash, sometimes downright unhinged, but when he makes a promise, you at least know he's going to fight tooth and nail to deliver it. America First wasn't just a slogan, it was a strategy. He slapped tariffs on China, renegotiated trade deals, and made damn sure American workers knew he had their back. Meanwhile, Albanese is basically running an Australia-last policy. He's more worried about what bureaucrats in Brussels or Davos think than what the single mum in Penrith is facing when she opens her power bill. And you've got to ask yourself, why? Why is our Prime Minister more interested in virtue signalling to the global elite than protecting his own people? It gets even darker when you dig into it. You look at the billions being poured into these green energy schemes, solar, wind, hydrogen. Sounds lovely, right? Clean future, shiny ads, smiling kids with kites. But follow the money. Who's cashing in? Multinational corporations, foreign investors, consultants with million-dollar contracts. Who's losing out? Aussies. Workers in coal towns left stranded. Families slapped with surging bills to cover transition costs. Farmers told they've got to give up land for transmission lines. It's daylight robbery dressed up as progress. And here's the kicker, most of these projects don't even bloody work at scale. But by the time we find that out, the money's gone, and the damage is done. And where's the opposition? Where's Susan Ley, the so-called leader who was meant to step up for Aussies? Sitting quietly in the corner, nodding along, too scared to call it what it is. If she had any guts, she'd be hammering elbow on this every single day. She'd be out there telling Aussies the truth. This government is deliberately sacrificing your living standards on the altar of global green politics. But instead, she's sipping the same Kool-Aid, hoping she can win by default. That's not leadership, that's cowardice. And it proves one thing, the political class is united, not for you, not for me, but for themselves. I'll give you an example that'll make your blood boil. Albanese swore up and down during the campaign that power bills would go down by $275. Remember that? It was the promise he repeated like a parrot at every debate, every presser, every TV appearance. Where are we now? Power bills are up, not down. Families are forking out more than ever, businesses are struggling, and that $275? It may as well have been a fairy tale. And when he's called out on it, what does he say? Oh, circumstances changed. Mate, circumstances didn't change. You lied. You sold a dream you knew you couldn't deliver, and Aussies are paying the price. And don't even get me started on housing. Young Aussies have been priced out completely. You could work 2 jobs, save every cent, skip coffees, live like a monk, and you'd still be chasing a house that slips further away every year. And what's Albo's plan? More migration, more demand, more pressure on an already broken system. He'll tell you it's about economic growth. What it really is? A Ponzi scheme. Keep the numbers up, make the books look good, while ordinary people drown. And Ley isn't challenging him, because the libs love the same game. It's about cheap labor, high demand, and keeping wages stagnant. None of it helps the average Aussie. Meanwhile, they wag their fingers at you for complaining. They tell you to tighten your belt, adjust your expectations, embrace the transition. Funny how they never have to tighten their belts, isn't it? Politicians get fat salaries, free flights, gold-plated pensions, while you get told to eat less meat to save the planet. They lecture you about emissions while jetting off to climate conferences on private planes. They say coal's evil while selling it overseas for profit. Hypocrisy doesn't even begin to cover it. This is betrayal. This is two-faced, self-serving treachery dressed up as policy. And here's something that'll really sting. While Aussies suffer, Albanese's government still finds billions for foreign aid, international programs, and funding their mates' pet projects. But when pensioners need help, when families can't cover bills, when hospitals are underfunded, suddenly the coffers are empty. Suddenly it's all about budget responsibility. Do they think we're blind? Do they think we don't notice? No, mate, we notice and we're angry. And that anger is going to boil over. Now, if you think I'm exaggerating, just look at the protests already happening. Farmers blocking roads, tradies furious about rising costs, families marching for housing reform. And yet the government's response isn't to listen, it's to shut it down. They talk about restricting protests at iconic sites like Bondi Beach or the Sydney Harbour Bridge, claiming it's about public order. Nonsense. It's about silencing dissent. They're scared stiff of Aussies waking up, so they'll use every trick in the book to keep us quiet. But here's the truth, silence never lasts. You can only ignore people for so long before the dam bursts. And it's already starting to crack. People are sick of being told they're the problem. Sick of being guilt-tripped for driving to work, for heating their homes, for wanting a decent life. They didn't cause this mess. They didn't dream up net zero, or mass migration, or half-baked housing schemes. The blame lies squarely with the politicians who think they're smarter than everyone else. And when you strip away the slogans, what you see is this. They're not smarter, they're not braver, they're not leaders. They're cowards hiding behind buzzwords, and they're dragging the country down with them. And if you think it can't get worse, mate, you're kidding yourself. Because here's what's coming next. More taxes, more restrictions, more sacrifices demanded from ordinary Aussies. You'll be told to give up your ute, to pay carbon levies, to fork out for green upgrades you can't afford. Meanwhile, the elites will keep living large, untouched by the rules they impose. That's not just unfair, that's dangerous. Because when people see two sets of rules, one for the powerful, one for everyone else, they stop trusting the whole system. And once the trust is gone, anything can happen. That's where we are, mate. On the edge of something explosive. And Albanese, Lay, the whole lot of them, they're playing with fire. Because Aussies might be patient, but we're not mugs. You can only push us so far before we push back. And when that happens, it won't just be one government in strife, it'll be the entire establishment. And maybe that's exactly what this country needs. And here's the wildest part. Mate, Albanese actually thinks he can spin his way out of this. He genuinely believes if he throws enough buzzwords around, resilience, transition, global leadership, you'll just cop it sweet and move on. But Aussies aren't stupid. We can smell a dodgy deal a mile off. We've seen this song and dance before, politicians promising the world delivering a lemon, and then acting like it's your fault you don't like the taste. It's gaslighting on a national scale, and people are sick to death of it. You see, every time he opens his mouth about net zero by 2050, what he's really saying is, you pay more, you sacrifice more, you live with less, so I can look good in front of global elites. And I've got to tell you, there's a breaking point coming. Because when families are sitting around the table at night, scratching their heads about whether they can afford heating or groceries, they're not thinking about 2050. They're thinking about next week, next bill, next meal. And that's where Albo's lost the plot. He's governing for future headlines, not present lives. And let's not sugarcoat it. When people start losing hope in their leaders, they'll turn to anyone who speaks their language. That's why Trump stormed back into power in the States. He didn't need polished speeches or fancy words. He just needed to sound like he was on the side of the ordinary bloke. And Aussies are craving that same thing. They don't want another Polly in a shiny suit mumbling about frameworks and targets. They want someone to stand up, point at the problem, and say, this is rubbish, and I'm going to fix it. Simple as that. But who have we got? Albanese, who's more interested in Davos cocktail parties than dairy prices in Dubbo. Lay, who had the chance to make history not just as the first woman to lead the Liberals, but as the one who finally stood up for Aussies, and she bottled it. Too scared to take on the sacred cow of net zero, too busy trying to look respectable while the country falls apart. Respectable doesn't pay the bills, mate. Respectable doesn't build houses. Respectable doesn't save jobs. And if she doesn't wake up, she'll go down in history as nothing more than a caretaker, a placeholder leader who never dared to fight. Meanwhile, Aussies are fighting every bloody day. Fighting to make rent. Fighting to keep their businesses alive. Fighting just to get by. And when they look up, what do they see? Politicians cutting deals with each other, clinking glasses, and patting themselves on the back while the country crumbles beneath them. That's the betrayal. Not just that they've failed, but that they don't even care they've failed. They think we'll just keep copying it because we're too busy or too tired to push back. But history shows one thing: when Aussies are pushed too far, we don't just push back, we fight back. And here's the spicy bit: they're terrified of that. Why do you think they keep floating the idea of protest bans at iconic locations? They know the anger is coming, and they're trying to build walls before the flood. But walls don't stop floods, they just make the eventual crash worse. You can't stop people from standing up for themselves forever. You can try to silence them, you can try to shame them, you can try to distract them with endless slogans, but sooner or later, the dam bursts. And when it does, Albanese and his mates better pray they're not standing in the way. And if you reckon I'm being dramatic, have a look at the rest of the world. France, Germany, the Netherlands, farmers on tractors blocking roads, workers storming capitals, ordinary people refusing to play along with elites who don't listen. It's not some far-off idea. It's already happening, and it's coming here next. Because once you strip enough away from people, hope, money, dignity, you create something politicians fear most: unity. Aussies from all walks of life banding together, saying enough. That's the real power, and it scares the hell out of them. So where does this leave us? In a fight for the soul of the country, mate. A fight between ordinary Aussies who just want a fair go and a political class that's decided we're expendable in their grand game of global relevance. And you've got to ask yourself, what side are you on? The side of slogans, spin, and broken promises? Or the side of your neighbor, your family, your mates at work, all struggling under the same weight? Because the sooner we stop falling for the PR circus and start standing shoulder to shoulder, the sooner we take our country back. And here's the blunt truth: it's not going to come from Albanese. It's not going to come from Lay. It's not going to come from anyone sitting comfy in Canberra. It's going to come from us. From people who refuse to be silenced, who refuse to swallow lies, who refuse to accept that worse off is the new normal. If this government won't fix it, if this opposition won't fight it, then Aussies will have to do what we've always done: stand up, dig in, and fight for the country we know we can be. And if that sounds like a rallying cry, good. Because it bloody well is. We're out of time for polite conversations and endless debates. The house is on fire, and the people who lit the match are standing there telling us to calm down. Nah, mate, we've calmed down enough. We've waited enough. The patience is gone, the anger is here, and it's time to use it. Not recklessly, not blindly, but with purpose. To demand better, to expect more, to make damn sure the politicians know this country isn't their playground, it's our home. See you in the next one, and don't forget to slap that like button like you just sold off your local hospital to pay for another overseas junket. Oi, and if you're really fired up, grab the "Can I vote for a kangaroo" shirt, wear it to the next rate hike meeting, the next protest, or just your local cafe when you're forking out $9 for a flat white while wondering why your tax dollars are fixing someone else's country instead of ours. Stay loud, stay awake, and never stop fighting for the Australia we bloody deserve.